Hey Milk Creek, this is Mrs. Jastrin. I'm going to talk to you today about ecosystems, matter cycling, and energy flow, specifically Objective 2, talking about how decomposers recycle nutrients back into an ecosystem. Today we're going to be doing lecture style notes, and so what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to flash down some important concepts that I'm talking about at the very bottom of the screen. Feel free to pause the video throughout so that you can write those down in your science notebook, or if you don't have your science notebook handy, grab a sheet of paper. Remember to label your notes. This is ecosystems, matter cycling, and energy flow. Specifically, we're talking about Objective 2, decomposers. And you can label them lecture notes. At the very end of the video, I'm going to talk about how to use these lecture notes as a study tool. So decomposers are key to a healthy ecosystem. They recycle nutrients back into the ecosystem, just like we said in the objective. They're organisms like bacteria and fungi that break down dead organisms, and they return those nutrients back into the ecosystem so they can be used by the living things. Decomposers transfer the atoms between the living and the non-living parts of an ecosystem. So they're really key and essential in order to break down those dead things, such as like the dead leaves and sticks and stuff like that that you can see behind me. They'll break those things down and turn them back into like nutrients in the soil that can be used by the plants that are surrounding me as well, like all the trees. Bacteria and fungi, like these mushrooms, are some of the most important kinds of decomposers. But there are other decomposers such as worms or flies that also help break down the dead and decaying material that can turn those things that are non-living and transfer it back into the living environment. So things that can be used by living things. So when a predator eats another animal, such as a prey, the prey's atoms are incorporated into the predator's cells, while other are released as waste. And the parts of the prey that are left over are then consumed by a decomposer. With scavengers are different from decomposers though. So scavengers such as vultures will break down dead and decaying matter into smaller particles, but not at a molecular level like decomposers do. It's an organism that eats dead organisms, not necessarily cycles those non-living parts back into living parts in the ecosystem. So without decomposers, we would have fewer nutrients available in our ecosystem. So they are key components of ecosystems, and they will show up typically at the very bottom of an energy pyramid, because even though you have a keystone or an apex predator or keystone species that might not be eaten by anything else in the ecosystem, a decomposer will still break down the nutrients that dead animal still contains in order to cycle it back into the environment. Okay, now that we've gone through the lecture, what I'd like you to do with your notes is review them, and I would like you to take each one of the things that you wrote down and write a question for each one that those notes that you took are actually the answers for. So for example, when I talked about what a decomposer is, you would then take that and write a question right above it. What is a decomposer? That way, when you do that throughout all of your different parts of your notes that you wrote down, you can then use that as a study tool. You can do a Q&A, a question and answer, so that you can quiz yourself before you actually take your content assessment.